Every once in a while, you meet someone who just blows you away. Deirdre Wolownick is that type of person. At age 70, she became the oldest woman to climb El Capitan for the second time. She broke her own record from when she climbed it previously. She speaks over 7 languages, is a prolific author, writer, artist, plays instruments. She is truly amazing. Tune into today's episode as she really dives into her views on aging. Hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Late Starters Club, giving you the inspiration, mindset, and tools you need to start something midlife and beyond. Remember, it's never too late to follow your dreams. Hey, late starters, it's your host, Andrea Vall, and I am joined today by the amazing Deirdre Wolownick. I can't even read her bio in less than 10 minutes. She is an accomplished writer, musician. She is the oldest woman climber of El Capitan, which she achieved that record at age 66. And then at age 70, she broke her own record, which is so awesome. I love that. She has a new documentary coming out called Climbing into Life. Welcome, Deirdre.
Thank you for inviting me.
And you also speak 5 languages, right?
Oh, like 8.
8 languages. Oh my gosh. You've taught languages, though, in different continents. That is just incredible. And you mom to Alex, who was the famous free solo climber of El
Right.
Capitan. He did that in 2017. Was that?
17.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so amazing. So thanks again for being on the show. Just tell
You're
us a
welcome.
little bit about how this started, because you didn't start climbing till later in life, and you also didn't start running marathons till later in life. There's a lot of things that you started later in life. And what prompted that endeavor?
Well, that's a very long story. Not sure how far back you want me to go. You really need to read the book to get the whole preface, this new chapter in my life, as it were.
Yeah.
I was 55 when I started running because I
Mhm.
knew that I couldn't run because I grew up in a house filled with smoke all the time.
Ah.
Cigar and cigarette. Both my parents smoked all the time, and our house was a cloud, a gray cloud. So anything more strenuous than getting up out of my chair, and I would huff and puff. My lungs were
Wow.
shot. My lungs were completely shot from that. And so from that, I assumed I can't swim or run or any of those things that require deep breathing.
Right.
I couldn't do that. But a whole series of events and things happened for a period of 5, 6, 7 years in my life.
Yeah.
When I didn't have a minute to myself, I was working 2.5 jobs. And people were dying left and right. I was taking care of estates and remodeling houses and working. And my kids had just lost their dad, and I was trying
Yeah.
to keep everything going. And so every night I would go out and walk the dog. Now, the
Uh,
dog was a Malamute, a big, an Alaskan sled dog. And I was home. Everybody had left. And my husband died. My kids were gone. I
yeah.
was left with the dogs, and I was doing all of this work every evening on the houses that I had. I was remodeling 3 houses on the East Coast and 1 on the West Coast by
Oh my
myself.
gosh.
And I never had time to go out and find any help. I just did stuff constantly. So I'd go out late at night with the dog. And one night I came back, Alex just happened to be home restocking his van from my refrigerator. And I came bursting through the door yelling, Alex, Alex, I just ran a mile. I was so excited. I had reached my Everest. I had found Everest for me, because I knew that I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
And when you shatter your illusions, what you think of your limits, when you shatter those limits, the feeling is incredible. I had climbed Everest. I had arrived.
Yeah.
And Alex kind of walking down the hall, and his reaction changed my life, completely changed my life. And I hope that this will translate to maybe making some of your listeners think about this.
Yeah.
I knew that I couldn't do this. And yet I went out with the dog and I did this just once, just a mile. For me, a
Right.
mile was the moon. And
Right.
I'm walking out of the hallway, and you have to understand who my son is. He's the greatest climber who ever lived. He's crazy capable,
Yeah.
physically and endurance wise. And it just, anyway, he's kept walking down the hall. He says, "Oh, ran a mile. Cool, Mom. If you can do a mile, you can do a mile and a half." And he turned around and left. And I was totally deflated, wind out of sails, that kind of thing. And then I started to think about it. And I knew right then, I knew that he was right. You
Right.
can do a mile, you can do a mile and a quarter. You can do a mile and a block,
Yeah.
and two more houses, whatever your measure is. And so I started thinking about that. And then the next night I went out with the dog again and I did a mile and a block, a mile and another block. And then I kept pushing those limits. Once you acknowledge that you don't have limits, then all of a sudden you don't have limits. And so that year I worked it up from going a mile and being excited to running a marathon. And
That's
it,
amazing. In
it
one
is,
year.
it is amazing. It is amazing. And the most amazed was me. I mean, I knew I couldn't do this. And yet, once you start to push those limits, there's no limit.
Right.
Obviously, there are limits, but you have to be past them and think, what if? So that's how it started. And then it
That's
just took
awesome.
off from there. And running was the first limit I pushed. And then I had this famous son, and I would get all these magazines delivered to our house. I'd see what he was doing, and he's on television, and I knew nothing about it. And I
Mhm.
wanted to. There was really nothing between us very deep at all, nothing that we could talk about because I knew nothing about climbing. I was too busy. His dad, who didn't do any of the housework and didn't do any of that, he would take him to all the climbing things. So I never experienced
Right.
it with him. And so I asked him to take me to the climbing gym one day.
Yeah.
It's just so I could see what he does because I was his mom. Mom's imagination is wild. I'd hear he went to Siberia and they did this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what is he up to? And I'd get these pictures in magazines. I'd open a magazine, there he is, and I'd read about his free solo. I
Yeah.
didn't know what that meant. I knew the words. I
Yeah.
mean, from what he'd said, but I kept thinking to myself, no, I must be understanding that wrong. No, that can't
Right.
be.
Right.
And
Right.
so I wanted to know what his world was like, some common ground, something to talk about, because there was really nothing between us because his entire world was climbing. I grew up in
Yeah.
New York City and I've been up in many, many big buildings, tall, tall, tall buildings. And I knew that if I looked out, if I leaned out of a window, my stomach would bubble, would roil.
Oh,
I assumed I'm afraid of heights. I can't do this.
right.
And
Right.
how many people do say, oh, yeah, I could never go climbing. I'm afraid of heights.
Yeah.
That's not true, I discovered. It's
So,
not,
yeah, so you found that being afraid of heights doesn't equate to you can't climb.
no, it's not the height that you're afraid of. It's the falling off the height that you're afraid of. And once you're tied on and you're on a rope and dangling and have the strongest climber in the world at the other end of your rope,
Yep.
there's nothing to be afraid of. And
Right.
so I had a wonderful time that first day. And then he left, and he's always gone on the road somewhere
Yep.
traveling. And so I was alone. And it took me a couple of months to get back to the climbing gym because I knew I didn't know anything. I didn't know
Yeah.
anybody. I didn't know how to do anything. That's a hard place to be in as an adult, totally ignorant.
Yeah, it is hard to be a beginner.
Yeah.
I definitely think that that is one thing that people are afraid of, being a beginner again at this stage of life. And how did you push through that?
Always loved being a beginner. I've always loved trying new things. If you read the book, you'll see
Yeah.
I've done many, many different kinds of things. I've been in all kinds of different jobs. And I started most of them from zero. For example, when I started publishing, I
Yep.
had no intention of being a publisher, but my publisher went under when my book was ready. And so the book was ready. So I did it myself.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what a publisher does. I didn't know what
Right.
it meant. So you had to find if how to learn. You can do anything
Yeah.
because especially with computers, we have the entire sum of the world's knowledge available on our computer. You can find out anything you want to know, or you can go to the library. Research librarians
Yeah.
are a gold mine. They can find out anything you want to know.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I learned what I needed to know. I
Yep.
learned what I needed to have, what kind of things I'd need. And I went back to the climbing gym and made friends. And then my friends started taking me outdoors, and the rest is history. I've been climbing about 12 years now.
So the book, just to make sure people know, and we'll have this linked in the show notes, book is called A Sharp End of Life, A
Mhm.
Mother's Story. It's talking about Alex's journey a little bit,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
also then your movement into that
right,
life of being
right.
an athlete and breaking
Yeah.
past these barriers and things. So it's
Yes,
awesome.
I've never thought of myself as an athlete. I lived a mostly sedentary life. I've been a teacher, a writer, musician, all sedentary.
Yeah. And I saw that you started your climbing training by doing pull-ups, and you just had a pull-up bar. You just do the pull-ups and all
Well,
of a
that
sudden,
the pull-ups happened later because I
oh,
realized that I needed to improve my arm strength. And
yeah,
you don't need a lot of arm strength to be a climber. People think
right.
you pull yourself up. That's
Yeah.
not it at all.
Yeah. It's more legs, right?
For feet and legs, yeah.
Yeah.
Arms are basically for balance and direction. Once in a while, though, you do have to pull. And I've never been able to do a pull up all my life. And so during COVID in 19, I bit the bullet, got a pull up bar, and I've been working on that and other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Cause I think that's so important as we get older to get more strength. That's
Yeah,
one thing that
yeah,
kind of happens to
yeah.
people. So tell us, what have been some of the obstacles that you've come up against as you started this journey? I mean, obviously you didn't just decide you're going to go climb a Capitan and then
No.
just do it,
No.
Like,
I don't know if I'd call them obstacles, things I needed to learn, basically.
mm,
Some people may see that as an obstacle, but I never did. I never have
mm,
in my life. You can learn anything. Like I said, we have the sum of human knowledge right here in our computer. But the only obstacle really was people telling me, Deirdre, you're too old to do that. You're going to get hurt. Have you ever heard that? You're going to get hurt. Well, no, I'm careful and I try to mitigate all the risks like my son does. People look at what he does, they say, oh, he's a daredevil. He is the complete opposite of a daredevil. He studied for 10 years to do LCAP. I mean, who does that? I mean, who trains for 10 years to do anything? I mean,
right.
when he talks about it, he says 2 years, but 2 years was the really final significant training because he's always going somewhere. If it wasn't Borneo or Africa or Siberia, I'm going to work on LCAP. That's his standard response. I'm going to work on LCAP. I had no idea what that meant until I saw that movie. It's not exactly obstacles, but the biggest obstacle for anybody nowadays is the media. From cradle to grave, the media is telling you what to eat, what not to eat, how you should dress, everything. And if you watch television, every other commercial is for drugs. If you're 50, you should be taking these drugs. If you're 55 or 60, you should be taking these drugs to go to sleep, these drugs to lose weight, these drugs. We are enough in ourselves to make our own decisions about what we need. Turn those screens off and go outdoors and find out what you need. That's the only real way to know what you're capable of and what you need to have to do in order to be capable enough. It gets me so angry that people assume that they have to watch television. No, you don't. When I had kids, we decided that we would not have a television in the house. And so
Mm.
my kids grew up without it. They grew up going outdoors and entertaining themselves and reading and experiencing life rather than sitting and watching a box. And that makes such a big difference in life. And as adults, they have both thanked me for that because it changes your life completely. But
Yeah.
that's the biggest obstacle is media.
Yeah. And I think there's such a negative connotation in media for us as we age too. It
Yes,
is how
exactly.
they portray people who are, and that's kind of the whole reason for my podcast is it's never too
Yes,
late.
yes, exactly. Yes.
And how are ways that you think that we can start changing the narrative around this?
Turn off the screen. Go outdoors. Mother Nature, we are natural creatures. We are natural beings. And we have created concrete cities and changed that. And all this technology changes that. But we are at heart natural beings. And the more you get out into nature and explore and experiment and try, the better you'll feel. I can't stress that enough. Just going to a green park in your neighborhood for a half hour will make you
Mhm.
feel so much better. And
Yeah.
we've forgotten that. And to our great detriment, we have forgotten it. Instead, we use drugs to feel better. You don't need all that. So, yeah. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that we have this podcast, and I can't wait to inspire other people to put down the screens and get outdoors and try, see what you're capable of. I had no
Right.
idea that I could do any of this stuff because
Right.
all my life I was told I couldn't. I
Yeah.
couldn't breathe well, so I couldn't swim. I taught myself to swim in my 40s.
Mhm.
I quote unquote that all these things were off limits to me, but it turns out they're not. You know,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful feeling to find that out.
Yeah. Yeah. It is like you said with even just running a mile.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
great.
That was
It's great.
outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, has there ever been a time where you felt overwhelmed and felt like it was all too much? And how did you get your mojo back?
No. There's never been a time
I
when I thought, no, no.
I was wondering because it seems like you just dive in and handle it. That's
Well, exactly, exactly. And we're all capable of that if we just adjust our mindset. You have to just
Mhm.
adjust your mindset, capable of so much more than we're told. I don't know if I put that right. All our
No.
lives, we're told you can't do that. You're a girl. You're not supposed to do this. When I was little, oh, how many times I heard that? No, you can't. You don't climb with the little boys. They'll see your panties. You're supposed to wear beautiful dresses. Oh, come on. We're constantly being told what we should not do. And you have the screens. You have to learn to just turn that off. You
Mhm.
are the only one who can judge what you're capable of. The only
Right.
one on the planet. You and Mother Nature.
Right.
And that's an amazing team, you and Mother Nature. We've learned to not depend on her anymore. And that's what's killing us. That's
Yeah.
what's giving us heart attacks and diabetes. Get out there and visit your mother.
Exactly, exactly. So I want to hear a little bit about the climb and the ascent and how long did that take and what was that like
Well, this is a
doing that
long
for the first
story.
time and the second
Yeah,
time?
I'll try to condense it because it is very, very a long story, and
Yeah.
I could write about it for the rest of my life. Um, Going up El Cap is terrifying. You have to, like my son does, you have to learn to expand your comfort zone to include some of the things that you're going to be doing. I mean, you're going to be hanging on the wall 3,000 feet up. That's terrifying, especially to me. You know, like I said, I used to go up in skyscrapers, and I knew that I was afraid of heights and all that stuff. But I knew also at this point that I was going to be on ropes and I was going to be with the best climber in the world. Whatever happened, he would know what to do, how to get us out of
Right.
whatever pickle I might get us into. And I also knew that I can learn. I spent a long time learning to do that, learning all the gear, learning all the technique that I would need, the strategies, how to handle the ropes and stuff, because there's a lot to know. To climb outdoors, there's a lot to know, and everybody's capable of learning it, but you have to first find out what you need to learn. So I had the experience behind me of doing the marathons. So when you train for a marathon, most runners, they set a schedule, make a schedule. Again, this sum of human knowledge is all here. If you look it up, you can find 18-week training schedules, 16-week training schedules, whatever fits your life. So I did that for marathons. So I chose to do that for El Cap. I was a college teacher at that point. So I knew that you can learn a little bit of anything in, say, 18 weeks. That was our
Mhm.
semester, 18 weeks.
Right.
So I set myself an 18-week schedule. And I fortunately had a place to stay in Yosemite. We had friends who were rangers. So I stayed in their house, which is really nice. So I went 3 days a week, which is like a college course, 3 days or 2 days a week for 18 weeks, and determined to learn this stuff. So I went there every week. I did 2 days of cardio training, hiking uphill, straight up,
Mhm.
get my heart stronger because there's a lot of that involved.
Right.
And sorry, 1 day of cardio, hard cardio, and then 2 days of training on ropes. Did on the day we left at 5:30 in the morning, and pitch dark. And we start about 7 because the approach, people don't realize this about climbing. Often the approach to the climb, to the base of the climb,
Right.
is harder than the climb itself.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
There were even ropes involved just getting to the climb.
Wow.
For me, that's climbing, but not for them.
Yeah.
So,
That's
we
just
started
a walk in the park.
the first time I did that approach to that particular part of El Cap, I was alone and I was afraid to do the whole thing. It was just too hard, especially when you're alone. If anything happens,
Right.
tough out of luck.
Right.
So we started climbing at 7 and climbed nonstop, top speed, extreme speed for me, for 13 hours.
Wow. That is,
A lot of hard work.
and I mean, it's like a marathon as well. You've
Yes,
got to train
it
for your
is.
energy, right?
It
The
is a
energy
marathon.
management is probably
Right.
a huge thing. Hydration, all
Right.
of that.
Eating was a
Yeah.
big one for me,
Right.
but I had to think all that through beforehand.
Right. And thus the 18 weeks of training before
Right.
planning and prepping and training. Like you
Right.
said, it's nice that you were related to the best climber in the world.
Yeah,
Probably.
that helped. That helped in terms of motivation and
Right.
confidence. I knew that he could
Right.
handle whatever pickle I might get myself into.
Sure.
But he wasn't around for any of the training though. And getting on those ropes, there are fixed ropes that hang on El Cap all the time. And I trained on those because I didn't
Okay.
climb this way. I didn't climb with my hands on the rock.
Right.
My feet were on the rock, but I used mechanical ascenders that help you ascend the rope, which is hard work on the upper body.
Yeah.
More hard work than climbing. Like
Right.
for the upper body, for the shoulders and the back, and it was hard work. And so that's what I did 18 weeks, 2 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah. That is awesome. So what are your plans then going forward? Or do you make plans? Do you make goals? Do you just say, next, I want to do this?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
is it,
I'm always
is it,
planning.
yeah.
After I did that, COVID struck. And I had a severe surgery, major surgery on my foot, and then my knee went out. I had all kinds of health issues. And so 4 years after we did that climb, I was hitting 70. And I couldn't have friends over because of COVID. We couldn't go to a restaurant because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I decided to find out if I could still get up El Cap at that advanced age. So I planned, because with Alex, we went up and down in a day.
Yeah.
Extremely unusual. My son holds the speed records on all the major rock formations all over the world.
Yeah.
And so we went really fast. He doesn't like to carry stuff. He haul bags with camping stuff. Water is very heavy.
Right.
So we just went up and down in like 21 hours.
Yeah.
Got down at 2 a.m. I wanted to know what it was like to sleep up there.
Oh, wow.
I had never done it. And I didn't necessarily need to sleep. They call those portaledges, the things that the little camp beds that they make that hang on the wall.
Right.
I would have been fine with that, but that's a lot of extra work and extra carrying, all kinds of stuff. So I got together a group of friends, some young ones who could help and some older ones who just wanted to experience it with me. And we went up the other side of El Cap. El Cap is kind of a V shape. And we went up the other side where there are fixed ropes all the time. And so part of it is scrambling, part of it is not climbing exactly, but scrambling on rock. And part of it in the middle is the climbing the ropes. And I knew I could climb the ropes because I had done that with Alex for 13 hours. So that was my biggest goal after El Cap.
Okay.
And I did that. That was amazing. That was absolutely, I'll never top that as a birthday party.
No, that sounds incredible. And then did you sleep at the top, or how does that work? You slept at the top.
Okay.
Okay.
El Cap is flat on top. Not flat.
Okay.
It's not peak.
Right. Right.
So we all camped on top, and it was
amazing. That sounds incredible.
It was a life experience, and I'll never top that as a birthday party ever.
Well, never say never, right?
Never say never. So this past year, I'm always setting goals because the planet is fascinating. There's fascinating stuff all over whether it's beaches or rocks or whatever you want to do. Mother Nature is so varied in her amazing things. I had started before that going abroad to climb. I've climbed in Mexico and Greece and Canada, here and there. And not hard climbing necessarily, because I'll never do really hard climbing. I'm not strong enough, but I started very old. I love it and I have a great time, but I do moderate climbing and I always will. but there's a lot of it on the planet. So I had started going abroad, took this story of mine, and I spoke in Greece and in Italy and in Switzerland. Of course, while I was there, we all went climbing. I got to climb in the Dolomites, which was a dream of mine since I started climbing. It was an amazing trip. And I'll be doing some more of that this year too.
Actually, Deirdre has her blog, deirdrew.us, and that has some posts about her speaking and adventures and all that. We'll have, again, that linked in the show notes as well. So that is just, it's so incredible. You're such an inspiration to everyone, I think, at any age, to just get out there. And
age has nothing to do with it.
No, it really doesn't.
You don't suffer from some debilitating disease, obviously, that's different, but all things being equal, age has nothing to do with it.
Yep. So one of the things I love to have every guest share is a quote or inspirational saying. What inspires you?
I wear many hats. I mean, I've been a writer, I've worked in the airlines, I've been a publisher, I've been a conductor of an orchestra and founder of the orchestra. I've done a lot of different things. So they all have different inspiring quotes. But the main one that kind of be applied to anything comes from Isaac Asimov, the grandfather of quality science fiction writing. I think he's the only person who was published, the only writer on the planet who was published in every category of the Dewey Decimal System, because he's written in all kinds of fields. But he's most well known for science fiction and creative fiction. And he said, I don't have the exact quote, but he said something like, if a doctor told me I had only 6 months left to live, I wouldn't mourn, I would type faster. In other words, go out there and do it. Go do what you want to do. Get it done. Move on to the next thing. Get it done. Don't stand around lamenting that, oh, I don't have a nice house. Oh, I don't have a good car to go out to the crag. And oh, I don't. Just go do it. And I think it was Nora Roberts this is a very, very telling piece of advice. You can't fix a blank page. If you're going to write something, just sit down and write it. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about doing it. Join clubs, join this. Just sit down and write it. And that applies to anything. You want to learn to climb? Don't spend your life looking online at how to climb and then go climb. You want to get healthier? Go visit Mother Nature, the source of all health. I mean, it's so simple. And the pharma companies make it sound so complicated, and it's not.
Right. Yeah, it's just getting out there, enjoying things, fresh air, and Mother Nature is huge. As someone from Colorado, I can definitely subscribe to that. It's beautiful, beautiful time to be outside and curious.
And you don't have to live in a place like Colorado or the Sierra Nevada. It can just be your little park down the block. You live in New York City, go to a green park. There are all kinds of green parks in every city. There's no excuse. There's really no excuse.
Yeah. Well, Deirdre, this has just been amazing. I cannot wait to have your documentary come out. I'm anxious to dive into your book and read that, and we'll have those links, and of course follow your blog and your next adventures, because I can't wait to see what else you do. So so thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye.
Thanks for inviting me.
Hope that was helpful, and make sure you grab the free guide, Top Tools for Late Starters, on the website at latestartersclub.com. And let's turn dreaming into doing.